Knarr stormed onto the hotness like a Viking horde pillaging a coastal village. It's gone from 0 to 1 in no time. And if you're anything like me, you might have had a little FOMO and you started searching the interweb because, of course, if it's ever number 1, I have to have it even though I've never played it. You know, I get it. I'm totally irresponsible. Lucky for me, I couldn't find any pre-orders in the US. However, I did find it on VGA, so I did the responsible thing and I tried it out. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. At its core, Knarr is combining some really familiar mechanics. It's hand management, resource management, card play, some engine building of sorts, but the combination and how it executes, I think it's pretty interesting and new. So thematically, you are Vikings, you're recruiting and also exploring new locations. It doesn't say pillaging, just to be clear. They're just exploring, I promise. But the gameplay on the outset is actually really simple. You play a card and pick up a card, or you spin those cards that you previously played to explore a location, and that location is going to give you kind of ongoing benefits as we go through the game. In addition, every single turn you have the opportunity of trading some of those resources that you'd be gathering. So I say it's simple, but as we go a little bit deeper into it, you're going to see that the decisions are multifaceted and really interesting and complex. Let's go over these actions in a little detail, and I think that'll suss out a little bit what this game is and how it's much more than just playing a card, taking a card. So when you're playing a card, you're taking into account two things. You're taking into account the color and you're taking into account the symbol. First of all, the color determines where you put it in your tableau. You play light color cards in a column, making sure that those symbols are showing, and that's important because every time you play one of those cards, you get to activate or gain all of the resources listed on all the cards in that same color that you played. Then there's a market of sorts of cards to choose from after that. Each column is assigned a color, and for free, you can choose the card that's in the column of the color that you just played. There is a way to mitigate against that and choose any card, which we'll get into in just a second, because now we're going to go over the 4 symbols that you're playing and activating. First of all, recruits. You have 3 recruit tokens you can slot into your shipboard. Once you've gained one of those recruits, you can spend them when you're selecting your new card to ignore that color requirement and select any card you want. You'll want a consistent source on these if you want to stay as efficient as possible and not be made to select a card from a color or a symbol that you don't want at that given time. And this symbol is reputation. There is a reputation track, and this is essentially a permanent point engine for you, because at the beginning of each of your turn, you get the points associated with how far you're up on that track. That's something that I've been looking at early and often, trying to make sure that that point engine is up and running. Anytime I've ignored that and let the other player go high up on that reputation track without me counterbalancing, they're slowly creeping further and further ahead of me during the game. And this next symbol is pretty simple. It's points. That's how you win the game. You get to 40 points, the game end is triggered, and ultimately that's why you're playing this game, is to accumulate as many of these symbols as possible. And lastly, silver bracelets, which is connected to the mechanism that I think really brings this thing together for me. Anytime you gain this symbol, you gain a silver bracelet. Just like recruits, you slot it into your shipboard up to 3. I'd mentioned that you have the opportunity to trade. That's directly connected to these bracelets. Take a look at the top of your shipboard. You see the symbols there. There's 3 different columns, and you spend a bracelet per column to gain the thing there. So you start with your ship and a recruit symbol in the middle. So for 2 bracelets, you get a recruit. So you can make this so much more powerful with the alternate actions. So if you don't play a card alternately, you're able to go up to these 2 rows of locations and essentially pay cards that you've already played to acquire one of these locations. These locations do a couple different things for you. You immediately gain the resources and points in the top right corner, but then they slot in at the top of your shipboard, making that trade action so much more powerful. So instead of spending 2 bracelets to get 1 recruit, you're spending 1, 2, or 3 bracelets to get multiple of these resources. You can visit multiple locations, they stack on each other, making this trade action more and more powerful and more interesting. Now, I mentioned you have to spend the card. So each of these locations has a recruit cost. They're connected to particular colors of recruits. So if you see a location that you want, you'll also want to be playing those same recruits, which leads to this really interesting friction with you and your opponents, because if they're playing the same colors and you're both looking at that same great location up top, you might pull away from that engine that you're building with the color cards to go and get that location, because when you have that location, those color cards are gone and you're kind of starting all over again with your card play. I think this is a really great addition to this game. It makes the decision of abandoning a particular card color a really tough one. So there's multiple dimensions in scoring in this game, and specialization in any particular area is balanced out by the finite number of each color card. You can't keep playing on top of that same color forever, so you need to find a way to spin those cards and get a location eventually. And that really drives to a couple really interesting cycles of building up cards, purchasing locations, trying to get bracelets to trade against, to activate kind of what you've built around the locations and your ship. I found it really, really fun. On top of that, most everything that you're going for, all 4 of those symbols, can be acquired through multiple phases of this game. The card play, trade, and location exploration all will produce those same resources for you. And the only permanent engine you're building is that reputation track where you're getting those points each and every turn. The game honestly has like my trifecta. It's simple to learn and play. There's not a lot of different decisions to be made, but each one of those decisions are multi-dimensional. There's a broad decision space that you're having to consider when you're making each one of those decisions. And lastly, the game state is constantly changing based upon how your opponent is interacting with the cards and locations. So replayability, I've already found, I'm totally addicted to it on BGA. I think the replayability on this game is going to be super high. And with that, I'm going to absolutely pre-order this as soon as it comes up. I think I'm going to stop myself playing on BGA so I don't ruin it. I really want to bring this to the game group and get people involved in it. So I'm excited for it to finally launch. As of right now, like I said, there's nowhere in the US to pre-order this. I think Board Game Bliss in Canada. There's also some European pre-orders. I'm sure this is going to be an Essen release title, but I will link everything I find in terms of pre-order in the description. And once I find a US pre-order, I'll also link it there as well. And if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. If you like content like this, reviews, gameplays, check out my other stuff, maybe subscribe, I don't know. And with that said, I'm out.